Imagine reaching the moment when the final judgments described in the book of Revelation begin to be poured out upon the earth. The seals have already been opened, the trumpets have already sounded, but now 7 angels appear carrying 7 bowls, and within those bowls is one of the most intense moments in all of biblical prophecy. But there is one question many people ask: why are the 7 bowls different from the 7 trumpets, and what exactly happens when each one is poured out? In this video, we will examine the 7 bowls in order and discover how they fit into the prophetic timeline of the book of Revelation. The context of the 7 bowls. To understand the bowls, we need to step back for a moment in the narrative. The book of Revelation presents a sequence of events involving the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. First come the 7 seals, then within that sequence the 7 trumpets appear. Finally, we arrive at the 7 bowls. In the script we are modeling, this sequence is presented as a progressive unfolding of the events described in Revelation, with the bowls representing an even more intense stage of God's judgment. John then describes a breathtaking scene. He sees 7 angels coming out of the heavenly sanctuary, carrying the 7 last plagues. The bowls are filled with the wrath of God. This image is powerful because it shows that this is not just another event. It is the final stage of a series of divine judgments. There is another important detail. While the trumpet judgments affect only part of creation, in many of the events described, the bowls represent judgments of a much greater scope. It is as though the narrative has reached its highest point. The first bowl. Then the first angel receives a command. He goes and pours out his bowl upon the earth. The result is a painful plague that strikes those who bear the mark of the beast and worship its image. This detail is crucial. The text does not present this judgment as random. It is directed specifically toward those who chose to follow the beast. The mark represents a decision of loyalty. Now that choice becomes central once again in the story of God's judgment. The first bowl immediately establishes the tone for everything that follows. The time of warning is coming to an end. What was once presented as a sign has now become judgment. But the first bowl is only the beginning, because when the second angel pours out his bowl, the sea itself will be struck. And what happens next is even more astonishing. The second bowl, the second angel pours out his bowl upon the sea, and what follows is terrifying. The sea becomes like the blood of a dead man. As a result, every living creature in the sea dies. This scene recalls the second trumpet, when part of the sea was also struck. But now the scale of judgment is far greater. We are no longer dealing with only a portion of the sea. The picture presented in Revelation points to a complete transformation of the marine world, and this prepares us for the third bowl. The third bowl, the third angel pours out his bowl upon the rivers and springs of water. The waters also become blood. Then a declaration is made, explaining the reason for this judgment. Those who shed the blood of the saints and the prophets now receive what corresponds to their own actions. This passage reveals an important principle throughout the book of Revelation. God does not ignore injustice. The judgment described is not meaningless destruction. It is directly connected to the choices and actions of those who rejected God. But the sequence is not over, because now the judgment moves beyond the waters and reaches something every human being depends upon for life itself. The sun. The fourth bowl. The fourth angel pours out his bowl upon the sun. The sun is given power to scorch people with intense heat. Their suffering increases dramatically, but there is an even more astonishing detail. Even in the midst of these devastating judgments, many people still refuse to repent. Instead of acknowledging God's sovereignty, they continue to reject him and even blaspheme his holy name. This becomes one of the strongest messages in this entire sequence. The problem is not only what is happening around them, it is the condition of the human heart in the face of God's judgment. People witness extraordinary events, they experience the consequences firsthand, yet they remain spiritually hardened. Now the narrative reaches an even darker point, because the fifth bowl will not be poured out upon nature alone. It will be poured directly upon the kingdom of the beast. The fifth bowl. The fifth angel pours out his bowl upon the throne of the beast. Immediately, his kingdom is plunged into darkness. The suffering continues. People gnaw their tongues because of the unbearable pain. Yet once again, the text tells us that they do not abandon their evil deeds or repent of their actions. The darkness here is more than the absence of light. It symbolizes the collapse of the system that had risen in rebellion against God. The power of the beast, which once seemed unstoppable, begins to crumble. But there is still one final preparation before the ultimate confrontation, and it begins with the sixth bowl. The sixth bowl, then comes the moment of the sixth bowl. The sixth angel pours out his bowl upon the great Euphrates River. Its waters dry up, preparing the way for the kings from the east. But the scene becomes even more intriguing. John describes demonic spirits performing miraculous signs and going out to the kings of the whole world. Their purpose is to gather them for the great battle that is drawing near. The narrative is leading the world toward its final confrontation, and at this very moment, an important warning is given. Behold, I am coming like a thief. The message is unmistakable. There is an urgent call to remain watchful. No one should live as though these events are merely a distant story. Armageddon. The kings are gathered together at a place called Armageddon. Here, the tension of the narrative reaches its highest point. The forces are assembling. The final conflict is approaching. And now we arrive at the last bowl, the seventh. The seventh bowl. The seventh angel pours out his bowl into the air. Then a powerful voice comes from the temple, from the throne itself, declaring it is done. Those three words mark a dramatic turning point in the narrative. Flashes of lightning fill the sky, voices are heard, thunder roars. Then an earthquake of unprecedented magnitude shakes the earth. The great city is divided, the nations are struck, and enormous hailstones fall upon the earth. The sequence of the seven bowls reaches its conclusion. After all the chaos that has unfolded, the narrative begins to point toward what comes after judgment. And it is here that we find a message we cannot afford to ignore. What do the seven bowls mean for us? Perhaps you watched this video simply wanting to learn what will happen in the future. But the book of Revelation does not present these visions merely to satisfy our curiosity. It also delivers a warning. The seven bowls reveal humanity facing the consequences of its own choices. At the same time, they remind us that God remains sovereign over all of history. The world may appear to be out of control, but according to the message of Revelation, there is an appointed time when God will bring an end to everything that opposes his kingdom. So perhaps the most important question is not when will the seven bowls be poured out, but rather, how are we living while that day has not yet come? Understanding prophecy is important, but being spiritually prepared is even more important. If you stayed with us until the end, write this in the comments. I choose to remain faithful to God.